Welcome to the deep dive. We're doing something a bit different today.
Mm.
Forget the usual reports for a sec, guys. Actually diving into, well, into Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe.
Correct, but not like a book report.
No, definitely not. You're here, our listeners are here to get knowledge, insights, fast and deep. And believe it or not, Crusoe's early choices, his initial screw-ups, they tell us a lot about human nature under pressure.
They really do.
Yeah.
Our goal here isn't just to recap the plot. It's about pulling out those key moments, those unexpected truths from his early days.
Yeah, what drove him? Why leave comfort?
Exactly. And those disasters at sea, the very start of his time alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much there.
We're digging into his father's surprisingly practical advice, the sheer chaos of those storms, plural, and how quickly he had to get resourceful when, well, everything went wrong.
There were some real eye-openers, I think.
Mm.
Underneath the adventure story, it's quite a sharp look at risk, consequences, and just that basic human drive.
Okay, let's get into it then. So what was it? What was the fundamental thing that pushed young Robinson off the expected path?
Well, Defoe calls it a propensity of nature. Basically, this deep-seated restlessness. It just clashed completely with the comfortable, stable life his family wanted for him.
Uh-huh.
And despite everyone trying to talk him out of it, especially his father, with some pretty serious warnings, this wandering inclination, as he calls it, was just too powerful.
And his dad wasn't just saying, don't go. He had a whole argument, didn't he, for the middle station of life?
He really did. A very reasoned case for it being the sweet spot for happiness. You know, not too rich, not too poor.
Right. Less exposed to the big ups and downs, the calamities and vicissitudes, as Defoe puts it. It's an idea that, frankly, still holds up when you think about finding contentment.
It's timeless, isn't it? His father's basically arguing for balance. Avoid the specific worries and troubles that come with being super wealthy or dirt poor. It's kind of what people still talk about today with well-being research.
Exactly. He points out that the really big disasters often hit the very top or the very bottom hardest. The middle, he argued, had more stability, fewer uneasinesses. It sounds pretty good, actually. A secure life.
It does.
So the big question is, why walk away from that, especially when it's laid out so clearly?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? He gets this serious and excellent counsel, but this mere wandering inclination just overrides everything. He consciously ignores his father's logic.
And the consequences hit fast.
Almost immediately, which really underlines the risk of ignoring good advice.
His first time at sea, it was rough. More than rough. He had zero experience, right?
None at all. So when that first storm hits, his own words are inexpressibly sick in body and terrified in mind.
Wow. So not just seasick.
No, pure terror. It's that sudden smack of reality, how quickly nature can just overwhelm you, a real wake-up call about how fragile our comfort zones are.
And his first thought, regret, right?
Instant regret. He immediately saw it as punishment, like the judgment of heaven for disobeying his parents.
Yeah.
Extreme situations tend to force that kind of rapid reevaluation, don't they?
Yeah, suddenly he's remembering everything, his dad's warnings, his mother's pleas. He said his conscience wasn't hardened yet, so it really got to him.
Oh, yeah. Tormented him.
Mm-hmm.
And he started making promises right there in the middle of the storm.
What did he promise?
He swore that if he just survived this, he'd go straight home. No more sea. He listened to his father about that middle station life. He suddenly saw the appeal of the stability he'd run away from.
You'd think that would stick, wouldn't you? A near-death experience like that.
You would. And they did make it. They got into Yarmouth Roads. The sea calmed down. Looked like he might actually get the chance to follow through.
A moment of calm.
Yeah.
A chance to go home.
Nope. Here's the twist. The calm didn't last. They were anchored for about a week, waiting for good winds, and then bam, another storm hit. Even worse than the first one.
Seriously? Worse?
Much worse. It just shows how unpredictable things are. One minute you think you're safe, the next crisis again.
And this time, even the experienced sailors were scared.
Terrified. They thought the ship would founder. It was heavily loaded, taking on water. They were firing distress guns. Real desperation.
So how did they get out of that one?
It was incredibly dangerous. A smaller boat, a light ship nearby, sent out a rescue boat. Getting alongside their ship in that storm was dicey. They eventually got a rope across, pulled the boat in. A very, very close call.
Okay, now surely he goes home. 2 storms, nearly died twice.
He renewed the vows again. Promised he'd head straight back. But then, almost unbelievably, he describes this pull, this influence he couldn't explain. And he gets on another ship, bound for Guinea, the coast of Africa.
You're kidding, after all that.
It just hammers home that initial propensity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That urge was stronger than fear, stronger than reason, apparently.
It really shows something fundamental about him, I guess. This almost deliberate ignoring of common sense, fueled by that wanderlust, makes you wonder how much our own nature can just override everything, even painful lessons.
It does.
Okay, so Africa bound. Again. And things go wrong. Again. He wasn't even signed on as a proper sailor this time, which he regretted later.
Right. And then near the Canary Islands. Disaster number 3.
Yeah.
It's becoming a bit of a theme.
What happened this time? Pirates.
Exactly. A Turkish rover, a pirate ship from Salé. They got chased, couldn't outrun them, tried to fight, but they were just overwhelmed. Captured.
Just like that. From wannabe trader to slave.
Just like that. A brutal reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. Life throws curveballs.
And suddenly, he's a slave in North Africa, owned by a Moor, a world away from that middle station his father talked about.
It's a massive shift. But what's really interesting is how fast he adapts. His survival mode kicks in immediately. He starts thinking, planning. You see that resourcefulness beginning to emerge.
Yeah, he starts scheming, doesn't he? How does he manage that?
Very cleverly. He convinces his captor he needs supplies for, everyday tasks or fishing trips. So he gets extra food, water, tools. Even talks his way into getting gunpowder and shot. Makes up a story about needing the master's guns. Pretty quick thinking under extreme pressure.
That's pretty bold. Using deception to survive.
Born out of necessity, wasn't it?
Mm.
It shows that ability to use whatever means are available. Raises questions about survival ethics, maybe, but his options were limited.
And then the escape itself. Under the guise of a fishing trip.
Exactly. Gets the Moor to sail further out than usual, waits for his chance, and overpowers him. Throws him overboard.
Ruthless, but effective.
A huge gamble.
Yeah.
But it worked. He wasn't totally alone, though, was he? There was a young boy with him.
Ah, yes, Shuri, the loyal companion.
Right. So the two of them, Crusoe and Shuri, they sail south down the African coast. Whole new set of dangers now.
Wild animals, unknown shores.
The noises at night were apparently terrifying. Wild creatures. They were scared to even land. And remember Shuri's solution.
Oh, yeah. Then we give them the shoot gun. A bit of dark humor there.
Yeah, it shows their bond, too, amidst the fear. They eventually land, armed, get fresh water, but Crusoe's constantly worried about, savages.
Understandable.
Shuri proves quite brave, actually. Goes exploring, comes back talking about lions. And Crusoe, using those guns he managed to get, he actually shoots a leopard and later a lion. He's definitely toughening up, learning to handle this wild environment.
A big step from the scared kid on the first ship.
Definitely. Then they see some local people on the shore. Shuri wisely advises against landing near them.
Good call.
They watch from offshore as one of the locals gets attacked and killed, probably by a big cat. Crusoe fires his gun, and the sound and flash just terrify the others.
I bet.
What's interesting is how the locals react to the dead animal. They immediately start butchering it with sharpened bits of wood. Practical survival. They even offer Crusoe some meat.
Which he turns down.
Yeah, he declined. Different cultures, different survival methods right there.
So how do they get away from the coast?
Pure luck, really. A Portuguese ship spots their little boat. A massive turning point. A way back to, some kind of civilization.
And the captain was decent.
More than decent.
Right.
Incredibly honest. Refused to take any money for rescuing them. Actually bought Crusoe's stuff, the leopard and lion skins, the leftover wax, the guns.
Wow, that's a stroke of luck after all the misfortune.
He really was.
Yeah.
A real contrast to the pirates. And Crusoe ends up with a decent chunk of money, about 220 pieces of 8. That sets him up for the next stage.
Which is Brazil. So he lands there with some capital. Seems like maybe finally he's got a chance to build that stable life his father wanted. Just geographically displaced.
It looks that way for a while. He even reflects on how foolish he'd been before. He gets help from that same Portuguese captain, buys some land, starts a plantation, grows tobacco.
And he's successful.
Very successful, initially. Business grows, he's making money. But then...
Oh no, don't tell me that restlessness again.
You guessed it. He gets comfortable, things are going well, and that itch comes back. He wants more. He's just not satisfied with good enough.
It's a pattern, isn't it?
It really is. And this leads to the next disastrous decision. He agrees to go on a secret voyage back to Africa. Why? To buy slaves for himself and some other planters.
Secret. So he didn't even tell the captain who helped him?
Nope. Went against his own better judgment, really, just chasing bigger profits. Another risky venture.
So, back on a ship, heading north again towards Africa. What happens this time? Good weather at first.
Yeah, good weather, but hot. They cross the equator, and then their luck runs out, spectacularly.
Let me guess. Another storm.
The mother of all storms, it sounds like. Even worse than the ones before. Utterly violent, it blows them completely off course, way out west into the Atlantic, far from any trade routes.
Lost at sea. Again.
And this time, they're worried about being eaten by cannibals if they do find land, rather than just getting home. The stakes feel higher. His ambition keeps leading him into worse and worse situations.
And then they see land. A moment of hope.
A desperate cry of land. But it's immediately followed by disaster. The ship slangs into a sandbank in the middle of the storm.
Shipwrecked.
Totally wrecked. The ship's breaking up. They try to launch a boat, but it's swamped, lost immediately. Chaos.
And Crusoe.
Swept overboard. A massive wave just takes him. He's fighting for his life in the surf, tumbling, struggling to breathe, trying desperately to reach the shore. It sounds absolutely brutal.
But he makes it.
Somehow, yes. Miraculously, he gets washed ashore, the only survivor.
Wow. The only one.
Imagine that. Dragging himself onto the beach completely alone, soaked, exhausted, and he's got basically nothing. A knife, a pipe, a bit of tobacco, darts in.
No food, no water, no shelter, and no idea what dangers are lurking.
Exactly. His first thought is wild beasts, sheer terror. He finds a thick forked tree and climbs up into it just to feel safe for the night.
And he actually sleeps.
Amazingly, yes. Sleeps soundly. The exhaustion must have just taken over. Shows the body's limits, I suppose.
So he wakes up the next morning. Storm's past.
Clear skies, calm sea, and he sees the wreck of the ship stuck on the sandbank, not too far offshore.
Oh, the irony. If they just stayed on the ship.
Crushing realization. But characteristically, his next thought isn't despair, it's action. How can I get out there? What can I salvage?
Resourceful again, straight away.
Yep. That becomes his driving focus. And this is where his real ingenuity starts to shine. He builds a raft. A makeshift thing, but it floats.
And starts ferrying stuff back.
Tirelessly, back and forth. Food first, biscuits, bread, rum, sugar. Then building materials, planks, chests, rope, which is crucial. He's thinking practically.
And weapons. He must have known he'd need those.
Absolutely. That was a high priority. He brings back muskets, pistols, gunpowder, lead shot, swords, anything he can find. Tools too, crowbars, nails, a saw, hammer. He knows he needs to be able to hunt and defend himself.
He basically strips the ship.
Pretty much. Clothes, sails, bedding, a hammock, anything potentially useful. Multiple trips, risking his life each time the tide allows.
Where does he put it all?
He sets up a basic tent on the shore using a sail and some poles. Protects his growing hoard from the sun and rain. He even fortifies it a bit with the empty chests and barrels he brought back. First steps towards making a home base.
And then there's that famous bit with the money.
Ah, yes. He finds a drawer full of coins, and his first reaction is pure survival mode. Oh, drug. What art thou good for? A useless metal on a desert island.
But he takes it anyway.
He does. After thinking for a moment, he scoops it up. Maybe habit, maybe a flicker of long-term hope, who knows? But practicality wins out eventually.
He can't keep going back to the wreck forever, though.
No, the weather turns again, the wreck starts breaking up more. He has to stop. His focus shifts completely now to survival on land. Water, food, and security. Protection from, well, whatever's out there.
So shelter is the next big project.
Top priority. He decides he needs both a tent for now and a cave for the long term. More secure.
Smart. Defense depth.
Kind of. He moves everything valuable, everything perishable, into the tent first. Then starts the huge job of digging into the side of a rocky hill. Hard labor.
And the dirt and rock he digs out?
He uses it. Builds up a sort of semicircular wall, a terrace around the front of his tent. Extra fortification. Very deliberate.
He's really thinking defensively.
He is. And then he has this sudden panic attack about his gunpowder. What if lightning hits it? All his defense, his ability to hunt. Gone in a flash.
Oh, good point. That would be catastrophic.
So he immediately divides it up, puts small amounts in different bags and boxes, hides them in separate places all over his little settlement, spreading the risk. Smart move.
Okay, shelter's underway, ammo's secured, food.
Daily excursions. He goes out exploring with his gun every day, partly looking for food, partly mapping the area. And that's when he discovers the goats.
Wild goats, a sustainable food source.
Potentially, yes. But they're incredibly shy and fast. It takes him a while to figure out how to hunt them successfully. He learns their habits, becomes a better shot.
Does he try to domesticate them?
He tries. He catches a young kid and tries to raise it, hoping to start a flock. But it doesn't work out initially. Another lesson learned, taming nature isn't easy.
So he's got shelter developing, a food source. What else is critical?
Fire. He needs fire for warmth, cooking, maybe signaling, and fuel to keep it going. These are the fundamental building blocks of long-term survival he's tackling now.
It's a huge shift, isn't it? From just reacting to the shipwreck to actually planning and building a life, however basic.
A massive shift. He's moving from crisis management to long-term adaptation, building, innovating, learning about his environment.
But the isolation, that must start to bite, right? Once the immediate danger fades a little.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer crushing weight of being utterly alone hits him hard. He calls it a dismal prospect. No hope of rescue in sight. The psychological battle begins.
How does he cope with that potential for despair?
He does something quite methodical. He literally sits down and writes out a list. Debits and credits of his situation, good versus bad.
Like a balance sheet of misery.
Sort of. But it's a way to organize his thoughts, maybe gain some perspective. He forces himself to compare his situation to worse possibilities like drowning or being captured immediately. Cognitive reframing, basically. Finding something to be grateful for even then.
Focusing on what he has survived rather than what he's lost.
Exactly. And he consciously decides to stop scanning the horizon for ships. Puts that energy into arranging his life on the island instead. Acceptance, in a way.
Does he name the island?
He does, calls it the Island of Despair. Tells you a lot about his initial state of mind.
Yeah.
But then he reflects on his progress. From having absolutely nothing, no food, shelter, clothes, weapons, to having salvaged so much and start building things. That sense of progress must have been vital.
And he starts a journal to keep track of time.
Yes, partly that, and partly, I think, just to have some record, some structure. He makes a cross to mark the days. He starts building basic furniture, a table, a chair. Admits it was incredibly hard with the tools he had.
Makes you appreciate workshops and hardware stores.
Doesn't it? He improvises tools, too. A wooden shovel, a kind of hod for carrying earth. Constant problem solving.
Is he still hunting every day?
Pretty much. Food is a constant need. And he finds some companionship, sort of. A cat survived the wreck, and he tames it. Later finds 2 more kittens.
A bit of company, at least. And probably good for keeping rats away from his supplies.
Likely, yes.
Yeah.
Then comes something really strange. He finds barley growing. European barley. Just sprouting near his shelter.
Where did that come from?
He has no idea at first. He thinks it's a miracle. A sign from God. Remember, he wasn't particularly religious before this. Isolation starts making him think differently.
How did it actually get there?
He figures it out later. He'd shaken out an old bag that had chicken feed remnants in it months before. But initially, it feels like a divine intervention.
That crucial for the future.
Hugely. He carefully saves every grain from those few stalks. He knows he has to try and cultivate it. That's the beginning of agriculture for him, planning ahead.
Does he face other natural threats besides storms?
Yes, earthquakes. Terrifying. His main fear is his cave collapsing or his gunpowder getting buried or ignited. Constant vulnerability.
Does he keep salvaging from the wreck?
As much as he can before it completely breaks apart. Timber, iron fittings, anything useful. Then he gets really sick. A fever, an ague he calls it. Bad dreams.
Just when he's starting to get established?
Exactly. It makes him incredibly weak, vulnerable. And it's during this illness that he really starts to pray seriously for the first time since that storm near England.
A turning point, spiritually.
Seems like it. He starts wrestling with big questions. Is God aware of him here? Is this suffering part of a plan? It's the beginning of a deeper faith developing out of hardship.
He actually gets down on his knees and prays for help.
He does. A real moment of surrender, perhaps. As he recovers, he explores more and finds more useful plants. Grapes, limes, lemons. Welcome additions to his diet.
Can he preserve them?
He tries. Drying the grapes into raisins proves tricky. It highlights his lack of knowledge, the constant trial and error. Then the rainy season hits.
Forcing him indoors.
Yes, for long periods. But he uses the time constructively digging his cave bigger, making it more secure, always improving.
Does he lose track of time?
He does lose track of the days of the week eventually. But he figures out roughly how long he's been there, about a year, and makes a point of reestablishing Sunday, the Sabbath, needing that structure, that connection to his old life.
Is his journal still going?
Yes, but his ink is running out. A practical problem with documenting his life.
What about the farming, the barley and rice?
He experiments, plants seeds at different times, learns the wet and dry seasons. It takes time, but eventually he figures out the island's rhythm. He manages to get 2 harvests a year. That's a massive step towards food security.
He's becoming quite the farmer. What else does he learn to make?
Baskets. He needs containers for everything carrying earth, storing grain, so he learns wickerwork, another vital skill.
And pots for cooking and storing water.
That's a huge breakthrough. He needs something better than leaky wooden casks or the few bottles he salvaged. He experiments for ages with clay, trying to make pots that won't crack in the fire. Eventually, after many failures, he succeeds. Earthenware. Game changer.
Allows him to boil water, cook properly.
Exactly. And he even figures out how to bake bread eventually. Again, lots of trial and error without an oven or proper tools. But he gets there. A taste of his old life.
So by the end of the second year, he's reasonably well set up.
Reasonably, yes. He has a routine. Shelter, food from hunting and farming, basic tools and comforts. The cats are multiplying, becoming a bit of a nuisance, actually.
Too much of a thing.
Something like that. He's still keeping the journal, managing his little farm, his goats. But the thought of escape never completely leaves him, does it?
He thinks about the mainland.
He does. Sees it sometimes in the distance, considers trying to reach it. But he's also terrified of the dangers of the sea crossing, the potential for encountering cannibals. It's a constant tension.
Does he try to build a boat? A proper one?
He does. A massive canoe. He spends months hollowing out a huge tree trunk, an incredible amount of labor.
Does he launch it?
That's the tragic part. He finishes it. It's magnificent. And then he realizes it's too far from the water and far too heavy for him to move it on his own.
Oh, devastating. All that work for nothing.
A harsh lesson. He reflects on the folly of starting something without figuring out how to finish it, not counting the cost, as he puts it.
But he also starts to feel gratitude, even in his isolation.
He does. He reflects on how lucky he was that the ship wrecked close enough to salvage. He starts to accept his situation, even find contentment in it sometimes, a remarkable psychological adaptation.
What about clothes? His original ones must have worn out.
Long gone. He learns to cure animal skins, goat skins mostly, and makes himself new clothes. A cap, a jacket, breeches. Admits he's a terrible tailor, but they're functional.
And he makes that famous umbrella.
Yes, a clumsy, heavy thing made of skins, but vital for protection against the intense sun and tropical downpours. Another example of adapting to the specific challenges of his environment.
Does he explore the whole island?
He tries. Makes a smaller boat and attempts to sail around the coast, but he discovers a dangerous current on one side and wisely decides not to risk going all the way around. He continues making baskets, builds better fences for his goats, even finds natural salt deposits.
So his life becomes almost routine, settled.
For many years, yes. He describes his appearance: long hair, beard, skin clothes. He builds a second, more remote shelter, a country retreat or bower. He seems to have found a kind of equilibrium, master of his domain.
Until the footprint.
Ah, yes, the footprint. After all those years thinking he was completely alone, suddenly, undeniable proof of another human presence.
How does he react?
Absolute terror, panic. It completely shatters his peace, his sense of security. All his careful routines, his fortifications, suddenly seem inadequate. He spirals into fear and paranoia.
Does it affect his newfound faith?
It does. His fear kind of overrides the trust and acceptance he'd built up. He starts questioning everything again. Eventually, he calms down enough to reason that it must be visitors from the mainland. Cannibals, he assumes.
Which is confirmed later.
Horrifyingly, yes. He discovers another part of the shore where they clearly come ashore sometimes. Finds human bones, remnants of fires where they cook their victims.
Unimaginable. What does he do?
He becomes utterly reclusive. For almost 2 years, he barely leaves his fortified home base. He lives in constant fear of being discovered. His main goal is concealment.
Does he think about attacking them?
He wrestles with it intensely. Should he try to ambush them? Kill them? It's a huge moral dilemma for him.
What does he decide?
Ultimately, he decides against it. He reasons that they haven't harmed him directly. Their practices, however abhorrent to him, are their own. He feels it wouldn't be just for him to attack them unprovoked. He leaves vengeance, if any, to God. It shows a surprising level of moral complexity developed in isolation.
So his fear changes his whole way of life.
Completely. He stops making improvements, stops inventing things. All his energy goes into staying hidden. He's terrified of making noise, terrified of smoke from his fire being seen.
Does he find a better hiding place?
He does. Quite by accident, he discovers a large hidden cave deep in the woods, much more secure than his original place. A perfect hideout.
A relief, I imagine.
Immense relief. He explores it, finds it's deep and safe, feels like another gift, another instance where hardship leads to an unexpected blessing. He reflects on that quite a bit.
So he stays hidden. For how long?
Years pass like this. His 23rd year arrives. He's still terrified of encounters, still cautious. His tame goats are one of his few comforts.
Does he ever try to signal a ship again?
Yes. One night he sees what might be a light at sea, or maybe it's just wishful thinking, but he builds a massive bonfire on a hill, just in case. A
Okay.
desperate gamble.
Does anything happen?
Incredibly. He hears a gunshot in the distance. Faint, but definitely a gun.
A ship responding to his fire.
It seems so. The hope, the possibility of rescue, of human contact after all this time, it's overwhelming. The longing for companionship just floods back.
And then he sees wreckage.
Yes. Later, he finds wreckage washed ashore from a different ship that must have foundered nearby. The sight hits him incredibly hard. He describes the physical pain of his loneliness, his desperate need for another person.
And finally, he sees someone.
Yes. Near the wreck, he sees a figure washed ashore. Barely alive, nearly drowned, but alive. Another human being.
After 23 years, a companion.
The prospect is immense. It brings this overwhelming sense of relief, a new focus, a potential end to the crushing solitude.
It's fascinating, that whole cycle. He runs from society, finds incredible self-reliance and isolation, but ultimately that deep human need for connection just comes roaring back. It really sets the stage for everything that happens next.
Absolutely. That tension between independence and interdependence is right at the core of his story, especially in these formative early years.
So wrapping up this first part of our dive into Crusoe's beginnings, we've really seen the impact of ignoring advice, the sheer randomness and danger of the world, but also that incredible adaptability humans have. Resourcefulness born of desperation.
Definitely. And overshadowing it all, perhaps, is the impact of deep solitude and that undeniable fundamental need we have for other people.
Yeah. And for listeners keen on understanding human behavior in extremes, Crusoe's early years are just packed with insights, aren't they? Resilience, decision-making under duress, the psychological effects of isolation.
It's a rich case study. How we adapt, how we find meaning, how our priorities shift when everything is stripped away.
So here's something to chew on. Crusoe rejects that middle station, that safe path, chasing something more. It leads him to disaster, then isolation, then profound self-discovery. What does that say about our own ambitions, our own restlessness, and what unexpected good, what hidden strengths might actually come out of the tough times, the isolations we face in our own lives?
It's a great question. Worth pondering what choices you might have made back then. What parts of his story, the mistakes, the triumphs, the slow dawning of understanding, strike a chord with you today. It's an old story, but the themes, they're still incredibly relevant.